2002 was a weird year for television. Networks were still clinging to the old sitcom formula, hoping lightning would strike again. But what we got instead was a tidal wave of reboots, awkward experiments, and shows that barely made it past episode 3. From talking babies to confused spin-offs, and sitcoms that forgot to be funny. So let's take a look back at the sitcoms that premiered in 2002. The ones that flopped hard, vanished fast, or just made us ask, who thought this was a good idea? These are the failed and forgotten sitcoms of 2002. Number 10, Family Affair. Premiering on September 12, 2002 on the WB, Family Affair was a glossy sitcom-like remake of the 1966 classic, a show that had once run for 5 solid seasons and captured a loyal audience in its day. But television had changed a lot in 35 years, and unfortunately, Family Affair hadn't. This updated version starred Gary Cole as Uncle Bill, and a noticeably rounder but still always game Tim Curry as the iconic Mr. French. Cole did what he could with the straight man role, but let's be honest, this show leaned hard on Curry to carry the whole thing, and even he couldn't drag it across the finish line.
You insensitive lout!
The premise stayed faithful to the original. A wealthy bachelor suddenly becomes the guardian of 3 orphan children, and hilarity is supposed to ensue. But the jokes felt outdated, the chemistry was off, and the tone was caught somewhere between sitcom parody and low-effort family drama.
Nobody makes a doll called Mrs. Beasley.
What makes you so sure?
I've been the manager of this department for 11 years. I was keynote speaker at last year's Barbie Fest. The license plate on my Saturn says doll crazy. Nobody makes a doll called Mrs. Beasley.
15 episodes were produced, but only 13 made it to air before the WB quietly pulled the plug. Critics dismissed it as lifeless and unnecessary, and audiences clearly agreed. It was a reboot nobody really asked for, and one almost nobody remembered. The only real reason to watch it today is to see Tim Curry putting in 110% effort, in a role that absolutely didn't deserve it.
No good happens.
Number 9, In-Laws.
Make yourself at home, don't mind me.
Premiering on September 24, 2002, In-Laws was NBC's attempt to cash in on the Meet the Parents formula. The setup was simple. A newly married man moves into his wife's childhood home to save money, only to have his life steamrolled by her overbearing ex-cop father.
3 is lucky, 4 is not. Name one lucky 4.
4-leaf clover?
Well, if you can find one in the backyard and a leprechaun who'll give you a ride, we'll see you at the track.
15 episodes were produced, but NBC only aired 14 before quietly canceling the series. And if you were watching NBC at the time, you might remember the network really trying to make this work, pushing it with loud, obnoxious promos that seemed convinced Dennis Farina was the next sitcom king.
Gene Smart plays his wife, but you can call her Gina. His daughter is the cutest thing from here to Pasadena. Who has a brand new show right here on NBC? Dennis Farina. Isn't that good?
To be fair, Farina was the main attraction here. He played the gruff, old-school father-in-law with that same no-nonsense edge he brought to his dramatic roles, just with a laugh track. Elon Gold played the nervous son-in-law, Bonnie Somerville played the peacemaker daughter, and Jean Smart brought her usual wit and warmth to the role of the mom. And while it never quite clicked with critics or audiences, it had potential. It may not have reached the comedic heights of Meet the Parents, but it had some genuinely funny moments, especially when Farina leaned into his dry, intimidating charm.
Hey, mine's moving up. I knew I picked a good one.
Oh, really? And what handicapping method did you use? And does it begin with the words eeny, meeny?
Actually, I thought of you.
And it's Captain Cranky making his move.
In the end, In-Laws became just another early 2000s casualty in the overcrowded sitcom market. But honestly, it deserved a bit more love than it got. Number 8, That 80s Show. That 80s Show premiered on January 23, 2002 on Fox. And if the title sounds familiar, that's no accident. It was developed in the wake of that 70s show's massive success, and even shared some of the same writers, producers, and behind-the-scenes talent. But here's the thing, it wasn't a spin-off, not technically, and that confused a lot of viewers right out of the gate. It was a completely unrelated show with new characters, new tone, and a much louder, more in-your-face 1980s aesthetic.
There's so much much love in this kitchen, we should open the doors and share it with the neighbors.
I tried that, honey. That's why Mrs. Nealon got the dog.
13 episodes were produced, and Fox pulled the plug just after one season. Well, the biggest problem? The marketing. Fox leaned hard into the name recognition, trying to piggyback off of that 70s show success. But instead, it invited constant comparisons. And that 80s show came up short. The writing was broader, the characters were less grounded, and the humor just didn't click with audiences. That said, there's a bit of a silver lining. The series starred a young Glenn Howerton long before It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And some fans today enjoy watching the show as an unintentional Dennis Reynolds the prequel. And honestly, that lens makes it a lot more entertaining.
Sonny, you sleeping?
Not now. What are you doing in my room?
We need to have a talk.
You gonna give me a punch in the arm and a condom like our last talk?
Ah, that was a good day.
Still, that 80s show serves as a perfect example of how slapping a familiar name on something doesn't always guarantee success, especially when it's not actually the same thing. Number 7, Baby Bob. Premiering on March 18th, 2002 on CBS, Baby Bob was exactly what it sounds like, a sitcom about a talking baby. The premise follows a married couple who are completely thrown for a loop when they discover their 6-month-old son can speak like a fully grown adult and not just talk, also wisecrack.
So, how did everything go?
Well, okay, I guess. Except for this baby at the market. He was just so rude to me.
Still not used to it.
The character of Baby Bob actually wasn't new. He'd already made his small screen debut back in 2000. Starring in a series of commercials for freeinternet.com.
Not when pigs fly away. Not ever. Good day.
Apparently, someone at CBS watched those ads and thought, you know what? Let's make this a show. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. Technically, Baby Bob ran for 2 seasons, but only 9 of the 14 episodes produced made it to air. And even then, CBS dumped the final 3 episodes in June of 2003, when no one was paying attention. Not exactly a glowing endorsement. Critics were merciless, viewers didn't care, and TV Guide placed Baby Bob at number 14 on its infamous list of the 50 worst TV shows of all time. Still, Baby Bob somehow kept working. After his sitcom crashed and burned, the character resurfaced as a spokesperson for Quiznos and a few odd commercials. Because if there's anything that says appetite booster, it's a creepy talking baby selling sandwiches.
Hey, Bob here for Quiznos, learning about their new Choose 2 menu.
Baby Bob is one of those shows that feels like a fever dream. And in many ways, it's a perfect time capsule of the early 2000s, when networks were throwing anything at the wall and hoping some of it would be babble. Number 6, Bram and Alice. Bram and Alice premiered on October 6, 2002 on CBS, and it had the kind of premise that sounded perfect for a character-driven sitcom. Alice O'Connor is a young aspiring writer who moves to New York City to chase her literary dreams, only to discover that her biological father is Bram Shepard, a once famous novelist now living in faded glory. When Alice finally meets him, she finds a charming but narcissistic womanizer who hasn't written anything worthwhile in years, is drowning in debt, and is somehow still coasting on the reputation of a single, decades-old novel. Despite the rocky start, the two begin to build a reluctant, awkward, but heartfelt father-daughter bond. 9 episodes were produced, but CBS pulled the plug after airing just 4. The remaining 5 episodes wouldn't see the light of day until 2010, when they quietly aired on Universal HD, 8 years after the show's cancellation. What's especially interesting is that Bram and Alice was created and produced by Christopher Lloyd. No, not Doc Brown, but the veteran sitcom writer behind hits like Frasier and Modern Family. With that kind of talent behind the scenes, you'd expect more staying power. But Bram and Alice never really had a chance. It debuted with minimal fanfare, and CBS barely promoted it. With a crowded Sunday lineup and no clear identity, it was lost in the shuffle. It's one of those shows that might have worked better with time to find its voice, or maybe even today on streaming. But back in 2002, it just didn't stick. Number 5, The Random Years. The Random Years premiered on March 5th, 2002 on UPN, a network not exactly known for its sitcoms at the time. The show followed three college buddies. They try to navigate the post-graduation slump, chasing careers, relationships, and adulthood badly. It had major Eric Matthews post-college energy, and not in a good way.
Not really.
You got the awkward guy, the womanizer, and the everyman. They all lived together in a nice New York City apartment they definitely couldn't afford. And most of the comedy centered around dating mishaps, bro banter, and vague career aspirations.
Quick question. What do you think of Sexy Sheets?
Could you not stand so close to me?
7 episodes were produced, but only 4 actually aired before UPN pulled the plug due to low ratings. It was gone before most people even realized it existed. Critics were unimpressed. The show was called painfully formulaic, full of sitcom cliches, and lacking any real identity. It didn't help that by 2002, the 20-something roommates in New York formula had already been done, and done better, by shows like Friends and Living Single. The Random Years just felt like a knockoff with no bite. It disappeared almost immediately, and it's rarely mentioned today, unless you're digging deep into the archives of UPN's most forgettable experiments, which apparently we are. Number 4, Imagine That. Imagine That premiered on NBC in January of 2002 and disappeared just as quickly. The show starred Hank Azaria as Josh Miller, a successful comedy writer whose daydreams constantly interrupt his real life. The gimmick? We actually get to see these daydreams play out in surreal, over-the-top fantasy sequences. It was a high-concept premise with a strong cast. NBC produced 13 episodes, but only 2 ever made it to air. That's it. Viewers barely had time to register the show's existence before it was yanked off the schedule. The show didn't know if it wanted to be quirky adult comedy, a heartwarming family sitcom, or a surreal sketch show. So instead it became a weird hybrid of all three, and none of it really worked. Number 3, Hidden Hills.
She's proud today because her roses are in bloom.
Hidden Hills premiered on NBC in September of 2002 and tried to ride the early wave of suburban satire, years before Desperate Housewives would master the genre. The show followed 2 couples living in a gated suburban community, filled with gossip, awkward social encounters, and adult humor disguised as PTA drama.
How do you get away from the kids to do that? How do you do that?
SpongeBob SquarePants. It gives you 30 minutes to yourselves.
So you just stopped by to make me feel like crap.
Yeah.
It starred Justin Lewis and Paula Marshall as Doug and Janine Barber, a relatively normal couple dealing with the absurdities of suburban life, over-the-top neighbors, and their own crumbling attempts to stay connected as parents and spouses.
I'll tell you later. Have a good day.
Hello. What? You patted me on the back. I guess that's better than a punch in the throat, yet I find myself wanting more.
In tone, it tried to be edgy but heartwarming, kind of like Malcolm in the Middle for grown-ups but with less bite. 13 episodes were produced and all of them aired, but NBC quietly let the show fade out by early 2003. It didn't attract buzz or a loyal audience, and critics were lukewarm, calling it pleasant but forgettable. One reviewer described it as a sitcom that thinks it's smarter than it actually is.
Mommy,
Yes, sweetie.
why are you doing the laundry naked?
Well, because all my clothes are dirty, silly.
Hidden Hills was stuck in that awkward 2000s NBC lineup, a little too racy for family TV, but too tame and conventional to stand out. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't memorable. In the end, it vanished from NBC's schedule and barely left a ripple behind. Number 2, Wednesday, 9:30, 8:30 Central. Wednesday, 9:30, 8:30 Central premiered on March 27th, 2002 on ABC. And yeah, that was the actual title of the show. It was meant to be tongue-in-cheek, a wink at network scheduling and how shows were marketed. But for most viewers, it was just confusing. And for the show itself, it was prophetic. The series was a workplace comedy centered around a struggling TV network, kind of a TV show about TV shows. It followed a cynical executive producer trying to keep a chaotic lineup afloat while dodging clueless execs, temperamental stars, and the usual behind-the-scenes insanity. Basically, it was 30 Rock before 30 Rock, but with none of the charm or staying power.
You tell me which one you like. Here's the first one. PM Tonight.
Does it seem a little redundant? Well, PM means evening, so you're really saying evening this evening. What's the other one?
I'll be right back.
It had the makings of a decent satire, but instead it came off more like an inside joke that the audience wasn't invited to.
If you have notes, you give them through me. Creative people get confused when the notes come from more than one source.
So if somebody asks me what I think, then I should pull you into a corner and whisper my thoughts to you, and then you'll pass them along.
Yes.
Only 3 episodes aired before ABC pulled the plug. The remaining 4 episodes were quietly burned off later that summer, long after the show had already been written off. Despite its smart concept and self-aware premise, Wednesday 9:30 was the kind of show that asked you to get the joke before you even met the characters, and most viewers didn't stick around long enough to try. It's a show that tried to spoof network dysfunction and ended up becoming a perfect example of it. Number 1, Watching Ellie. Watching Ellie premiered on February 26, 2002 on NBC, and at the time, it felt like a big deal. Julia Louis-Dreyfus was making her return to primetime television. Fresh off the legendary success of Seinfeld, NBC promoted it hard. There was buzz, there was expectations, and then there was confusion. The show's original format was ambitious. Each episode played out in real time, 22 uninterrupted minutes, following Ellie, a lounge singer in LA, through her daily misadventures. No laugh track, single camera, and a tone that wobbled between quirky indie comedy and experimental character study.
Well, we didn't run into each other exactly. You chased me down the street.
Okay, let's try not to make this like totally awkward.
It was a bold move for NBC in 2002, maybe too bold. The concept was ahead of its time, but didn't really connect with audiences. Ratings dropped quickly, and after 6 episodes, the show was pulled. NBC brought it back in 2003 with a completely new format. Traditional multicam, live audiences, laugh track, the whole works.
Just really, when Fred said niece, I pictured a little girl in pigtails or something, but you are so much bigger.
But by then, the damage was done. 17 episodes were produced in total, but Watching Ellie never found a real identity or an audience. Critics were mixed, praising Louis-Dreyfus's performance, but unsure what the show wanted to be.
Hey, when did that shapely little Viking move in downstairs? Holy ice fishing, Batman! She puts North Pole in my Lapland, if you know what I mean.
It didn't help that the press started throwing around terms like the Seinfeld curse, lumping it in with other post-Seinfeld projects we've covered in other videos. In hindsight, Watching Ellie wasn't a bad show, just one caught between 2 eras of TV, too weird for 2002 network comedy and too networky for what was becoming the next wave of single-camera, character-driven sitcoms. Let me know which one of these you actually watched, or if you even remember any of them. As always, thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more deep dives into TV's forgotten past.